What's happening, guys? Back today with another video. Today I'm here to talk about Dragon Ball Z again. I'm doing a follow-up video to a video I did with another YouTube creator who I happen to have on the channel again today. So I have Mike from Laughing Stock Media. Go ahead and say, everybody.
Hey guys, it's Mike here, and I'm really looking forward to discussing this topic about another arc of Dragon Ball.
We did a similar video about the Saiyan Saga, which I will leave a link for that in the description below if you want to check that out. But it was generally just, what the Saiyan Saga meant to us, meant to the series, the high points, the low points, if there was any, and why people think that it's the best arc. So, backpacking off of the Saiyan Saga, one thing that I think that this saga does better than the Saiyan Saga is two things. One, obviously it world builds a lot better because we literally go to another world in this for the first time, going off of the world building, because we've got teasers of two different races in the series, which was the Saiyan race and the Namek race, because again, a lot of people forget that like Piccolo and Namek got their first introduction to their own race, and now that we get to finally see like where he's from and where his origin is, and it's really cool. And the other thing too is I think that this arc does better than the last one is the stakes are higher, because, well, Vegeta could be on a universal threat. It was more of keeping the planet safe, but now it's like we're getting into the tier of villains that could really put the universe in jeopardy, in peril and whatnot.
Yeah.
So
it is a really interesting setting of Namek as a planet. It's a far more naturalistic environment compared to the Earth, where on Earth it has a lot of variety for sure. We see that all throughout the original Dragon Ball with the mystical adventure, the magic, the combination of like rural areas and dinosaurs and magic and other realms and gods and everything along those lines. And so we go hardcore into the science fiction aspect that was introduced in the last arc with Raditz and the Scouters and power levels, and they go that much further beyond Toriyama does with the story. And then we get into Namek, where one of the things I also think it does, in addition to what you were saying with the scaling, increasing the threat, the tension level, and the escalation, which is a major thing that Toriyama does throughout the story. Sometimes not always to the benefit, because it just keeps going bigger and bigger and bigger. And eventually it's like, they could blow up universes now. How do I comprehend this? I can comprehend my country, but the universe, right? So, but another thing that's really great that I love about the arc is the themes. And this is something Toriyama does so well in the four main story arcs of the canon manga of Dragon Ball Z's section of that manga, like the Saiyan, Frieza, Cell / Android, artificial human, and then Buu, which is telling the story similar to what we saw just before with Goku versus Vegeta, but on a much larger scale, of the low-class warrior who was sent away from a planet that was destroyed by the ultimate evil power in the universe, the villain Frieza, who blasted and destroyed planet Vegeta, Goku's homeworld, that he didn't even remember or know, and then he rises up from being such a low, weak warrior to being able to ultimately overthrow the Emperor of the universe, to overthrow the established order, like the Joker said in The Dark Knight, but by becoming the ultimate legendary version, the Super Saiyan, which so many great moments, which we'll get into in the video for sure, but the themes themselves that this arc, and especially the following one, are just, it's very rich in those, and that's something that makes it so good.
Yeah, and it's funny, I want to touch up on something you just mentioned too, because it's funny that because this saga kind of follows a similar kind of trope in the introduction to its main villain, because Raditz came down and he had a tough fight between him and Goku and Piccolo and whatnot, and you thought okay, he was tough to beat, but Raditz pretty much just name drops, that oh yeah, I'm not actually the big bad of the arc, it's these two you have to worry about. And so you're thinking to yourself okay, Raditz was a time and a half to beat, how in the world are they going to be able to beat these two guys who are even stronger? And so, of course, the answer was to train. But now, when Goku is on his way to Namek, you know, and this is the first time like you've seen King Kai like being like, okay, yeah, stay away from this guy. Like whatever you do, do not engage this guy. And so like that threw me for a weird sleep, because like now we're pretty much, you know, and by the time like if you're watching this, you know, you've already heard Frieza's name by Krillin and Gohan kind of being on Namek already. But that's like when Goku, you know, tells King Kai where he's going and what he's going to do. King Kai's like, wait a minute, I should check it out. Yeah. Figures out that Frieza's there. He's like, oh, no. You stay off to his scouter. Like, you do whatever you have to do to not get near this guy, because you will lose. And you're like, okay, like, obviously that's not going to happen. Like, Goku and his friends, like, even if they tried to stay away from Frieza, like, the activities that they have to pull off are gonna, you know, circle around to Frieza at some point. They're gonna have to engage Frieza at some point. So you're thinking, like, okay, like, if King Kai is really worried, this is a guy who's seen Vegeta fight. Like, he's seen the fight between Goku and Vegeta. You're just like, okay, how are they going to pull it off? Even if they get Vegeta's help, are they actually going to be able to pull it off? So yeah, like, that is something that, like, it follows the last arc, but I feel like in a much gruesome, heavier degree as far as suspense, because now, like, you know, looking back at it, first form Frieza was a nightmare already compared to what level Vegeta and Goku were at the time. But now we hadn't even known he has 3 other transformations that are going to put him even far above that. So yeah, I think the introduction to Frieza was amazing and like very suspenseful in my opinion.
Yeah, Toriyama really turned up the tension, suspense, and desperation. And it's only because of Frieza's arrogance and decision to play with his food that Goku ever even became the Super Saiyan in order to defeat him. I mean, the thing is that Goku, even after all the training and the 100 times gravity and the Kaioken on his way to the planet, wouldn't even be able to beat Frieza in his second form. His second most suppressed form, the taller one that looks like King Cold. In his final form, his true original base form, Frieza could literally finger flick the 900,000 hypothetical power level of Goku when he shows up on the planet. You know, Goku has to get a Zenkai boost, but eventually Goku gets all these power-ups and fights against desperation, overcomes it, and achieves that form of Super Saiyan that ties into Frieza's greatest fear. He destroyed the planet in the original storyline before Beerus started getting credit for everything. And so he destroyed the planet because he was afraid of Super Saiyan rising up amongst them that would eventually overthrow him and overcome his power. He wanted to cement his power eternally with eternal life, which was why he got the Dragon Balls. And so when Goku becomes the thing that Frieza most feared, in part because of Frieza's own actions, he is undone by his own actions, and the lowest class rises up to overthrow it. Again, great storytelling, and the power levels in that arc really help to establish that too, because they give fans a tangible way of understanding it, and something that a lot of other anime would go on to kind of copy that idea, because it's a very easy and simple way to say this number is bigger and this person has the biggest number, and you know, like, it's a very easy way to say this is why this person would win, and then it's like, well, the heroes overcome the numbers. And so, you know, it's great storytelling.
You know, backpacking on something you had said, I think what Toriyama does pretty well is kind of give us too much hope. Yeah. In a way, because like a perfect idea that is whenever Goku powers up for Ginyu and you see Ginyu kind of like crapping his pants, and you're thinking like, okay, Frieza obviously respects the strength of Ginyu to rely on him to get the job done that he needs to get done. And so you're thinking like, okay, Ginyu's got to be at least relative to Frieza's strength, right? So you're thinking like, okay, if Goku can make Ginyu so scared and can realistically beat him, then Goku has to at least stand a chance against Frieza. And then, of course, like you said, like his final form, like even his first form towers Ginyu substantially. Oh, yeah. So you're thinking like, okay, there. I mean, you know, and so yeah, it gives us hope that like maybe Goku can do it, but like nope. And one thing I think it's kind of interesting about the Saiyan Saga, well, Saiyan Saga 2. Saiyan Saga and Namek Saga specifically, oddly enough, the series is called Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z, right? But I mean, after this arc, the Dragon Balls don't really become as big a plot device as they do in this arc specifically. Saiyan Saga kind of, but like not as much. Like yeah, Nappa and Vegeta were there to find the Dragon Balls, but it was almost like I don't know. It almost seemed like the Saiyan background, was more of a plot device than it was for anything else. But this, like the literally the arc and the saga is derived and directed because of the Dragon Balls specifically. Like, everyone's out to get the Dragon Balls specifically in this arc. So like they become like the biggest plot device in this saga, specifically the Cell Saga and the Buu Saga. They don't really even like mention the Dragon Balls until like late in the arc itself. So yeah, and I think that's what I like about it. I think that's why a lot of people kind of like objectively say that this is like the Dragon Ball arc, because it's all centered around the Dragon Balls as a whole.
Yeah, so it's more like similar to the arcs of the original run of like Dragon Ball, like where like the first arc they go on the mystical journey to find them, the hunt for the Dragon Balls arc, and then it kind of goes back and forth. Like the Red Ribbon Army wants the Dragon Balls. That's kind of like their goal, so that they can make Red taller. They all think that they're doing it for world domination, but they're dying because the guy wants to be taller. And then, like King Piccolo, he wants it for eternal youth. But after that, like the 23rd tournament, obviously they don't need the Dragon Balls. The 22nd, they don't need them. And then, of course, the Saiyan Saga, it's like a MacGuffin, which is like a plot element that isn't the core central focus of the story that drives the story. So the Saiyans go to the Earth to get the Dragon Balls, but then it becomes more about like defending the Earth against them and just the desperation to survive. Frieza, everyone goes to Namek in order to get them. The humans, like the good guys, the protagonists, they want to wish back their dead friends. Frieza wants immortality. Vegeta wants immortality to defeat Frieza. We get more backstory as to why he wants that. So yeah, they make the Dragon Balls, Toriyama in this case, incredibly focal, whereas afterward it becomes, again, especially in the Cell Saga, even more sci-fi centric, to where it's more about science and overcoming time as opposed to using the Dragon Balls. They are helpful and somewhat important at the end, but Toriyama uses them more as like a storytelling device, where it's like, well, we can't wish anyone back because we didn't remind Dende to do that, so it's like we can't wish the people back who already died, and then tying into the ending there. So
yeah, so real quick, we'll because we kind of lost track of the characters that we were talking about. I do want to talk about some like good character moments in this saga. There's a lot of hype as far as character moments. So like first thing I will say is that Vegeta is at his most ruthless, I feel like, in this saga specifically. Right out of the gate, Vegeta is literally just going to town on anybody he can, and it's like, I don't know, like going from Kui to Dodoria to Zarbon, and I don't know. It's funny because like you obviously are. It's really like a contradictory kind of placement in this card with Vegeta, because like Vegeta is an antagonist.
Yeah.
You still have him in that villain category, but it's funny that when he's fighting these people, you're still rooting for Vegeta in a way. It's really weird. Like you want Vegeta to win, and you find yourself like really curious, like when he's fighting, Dodoria or Zarbon, and Zarbon specifically is the one that's kind of giving him a beatdown in round one, and you're like, well, crap, like I hope Vegeta doesn't actually die, or if he did die, like it's kind of weird that he's that big of a character, to just get killed off.
So Vegeta in this case, he's like, I guess kind of what we would call an anti-villain. He's still a villain, but he's also working directly against the big bad villains of the arc. So he's a bad guy, but one of the things that's great, like you were saying, is that he has a very clear motivation. We're seeing him working toward a goal, and like really the main characters of this arc are not, like Goku isn't really the main character of this arc. It is actually Vegeta, Gohan, Krillin, and Bulma. So with that being the case, we see them the whole time, and we get a lot of fun dynamics and development between Krillin and Gohan and their friendship, and them hanging out and being pals with Dende, and Bulma, she's doing some stuff here and there. She kind of gets lost in the shuffle later on, but everything with Vegeta, them teaming up and having like the alliance of needs, so many great character moments with regard to them, who pretty much carry everything, because Goku, much like in the Saiyan Saga, and really all throughout Dragon Ball Z in that section, is always getting sidelined so that the other characters can do something. You know, Goku is in the hospital for the first section of this arc. And so Gohan, Krillin, and Bulma, they're the main cast of protagonists. Then we got Vegeta, we got the villains. Goku shows up, immediately gets sidelined again. He shows how powerful he is, but then he gets body stolen, and then he gets put in the healing chamber so that the other characters can fight again. You know, so it's kind of like Goku's best stuff, and when he takes more central focus, is near the end of the arc. But I've heard some people over time say this, and it's an interesting kind of way to look at it, that Goku kind of like being the one who inevitably fights Frieza, one of the most iconic fights of all time in anime for sure. In terms of the character elements, like Goku barely has much investment in the fight against Frieza, aside from he's the big villain and Goku's the strongest, so they have to fight. Whereas, you know, like, think about it like this, and I didn't even think about this until going back through the manga again last year and doing videos about Bardock. Basically, Toriyama didn't create Bardock. Like, that was actually Toei. Toriyama put a little shout out to Bardock in the manga, like in one panel, actually two. So, aside from that, Goku didn't really have much connection to Frieza personally, aside from, like, he just kind of destroyed his planet that Goku didn't know anything about, you know? So, at that point, a lot of people would be like, Goku kind of stepping up and fighting Frieza and defeating him isn't really the best narratively. And for me, it's like the arc slows down to a crawl, especially in the anime, like the fight between Goku and Frieza. So, you know, it does kind of raise the question, does that final act drag a little bit because of the fact that we didn't have Goku truly being built up to fight Frieza in the same sense as the others? He didn't have that same kind of like back and forth connection in the arc. But, you know, is the execution what really carries it there? What do you think?
Well, it's funny you say that because, like, Frieza actually, you know, somewhat name drops Bardock to Goku specifically when he's like, "Oh yeah, I recognize you. I killed your dad. Like, you're his offspring, aren't you?" And Goku's like, "I don't care."
Yeah.
He literally told Frieza, like, "I don't care. Like, that has nothing to do with me anymore." So, like, and it's funny you said that because I think in terms of Goku's personality, I think that if he thought that Vegeta could beat Frieza, I think Goku would just let Vegeta kill Frieza. I think, honestly, Goku only stepped up to the plate because he was the last ditch ever, because no one else could. So, like, I feel like Goku's personality, if he felt Vegeta could take out Frieza, he'd be like, you know what? This is your fight. And backpacking off of that, he also tells Frieza, it's like, all right, man, well, Vegeta's like down now. Like, he's done, you beat him. But whatever problems you have with him, you take them up with him now. Like, almost like taking responsibility on a Saiyan.
Yeah, that's a great point. So he kind of takes on, especially with Vegeta's death, and the anime goes even more into this with, like, kind of the mental images that Goku sees. Like, Goku, even though he doesn't really care about his Saiyan heritage, like, he kind of takes on Vegeta's pride in being a Saiyan and the Saiyan race when he goes to fight Frieza. You know, he says, for the people you've killed and for, you know, just all that you've done, I'm going to defeat
people of Namek.
The people on Namek, the people, the Saiyans, like all of them, he takes them all on unto himself so that he could defeat the villain. You know, again, kind of those themes. Like, Goku might not have had the direct connection with Frieza up until this point. He never even saw him or met him until right now. But when he does fight him, he takes on everyone else's struggles and battles against Frieza himself. So,
well, it's funny because, like, you know, because you and I were talking about this before we started recording, right? And I think that while we're on the topic of Vegeta's death, two things I think this scene incorporates perfectly.
Yeah.
For one thing, it tells us how Vegeta got to how he is now.
Yeah.
Like, obviously, like, he'd still, like, because of how he was raised, you know, he's a royal prince. I feel like there will always be some kind of arrogance to him, but arrogance is not ruthlessness. And I think that, you know, Vegeta telling Goku, like, yeah, I'm the way I am today because of this guy right here. Like, yeah, it really, like, I don't know, it contextualizes Vegeta's character on a whole nother level, where both the audience and the characters in the series can finally see how someone's trauma could really affect them and who they become. And the other thing that this does really well is that, again, this is what you and I were talking about before we started recording, is it really shows us Goku's his ability to break down people's dynamic character, because he was the one to like voice like, okay, like you weren't evil by choice, like this guy made you into what you are. Like I can see that it wasn't easy for you, like you were doing what you had to do like the entire time, and you know it couldn't have been easy for a guy like you to shed tears the way you did. And so I don't know, it's a really good character moment for both Goku and Vegeta, in my opinion. I know it's more for Vegeta letting down all the pride he has to, you know, literally beg Goku to give up his feelings in order to kill Frieza. Don't give him a second chance. Like, do not give him a second chance. You need to kill this guy.
Definitely one of the most emotional. Vegeta gets two of the most emotional scenes in the franchise, you know, like the Buu Saga one, and then here Goku gets some for sure along the way too. But yeah, just the recontextualization just adds so much more layers to Vegeta's character. It adds more layers to the story. And yeah, like Vegeta, like many villains, is born out of circumstances. You know, it's more along the lines of he's royalty, but his people are gone. They were killed by this one guy who like basically lorded over him with his supreme power. He easily killed Vegeta's father and like just doesn't care. You know, like he just uses him as like a pawn. Vegeta, you know, he's always resisting to a degree, but at the same time, it's meaningless because he's nothing compared to Frieza and his power. And so, yeah, ultimately, it's just like all the character dynamics are really well handled. You know, all the dynamics on Namek are really well handled, and it's just it's great from that sense.
Well, you're excited to see that Vegeta has, because whenever he sees Goku when he arrives to fight Frieza, and like he looks up at Goku and he's like, you feel the pride that Vegeta has for Goku. You know, for the first time you feel that, and it's like you kind of get that sense. You kind of feel that sense, like, okay, even though they're kind of like at odds with each other, Goku and Vegeta, there is some sense of kinship because of like where they come from and like who they are. And so like.
But yeah, Vegeta does have a clear softening of his ice-cold heart, you know, over the course of the story. Namek is kind of a little bit opening up. Frieza broke him down to such a degree he cried when Frieza kicked away his attack because he knew he had no power to stop Frieza. And then he cried again when he was dying because he fully opened up and revealed what he wanted Goku to do to kill this being who, like, lorded over him and everything we discussed. So Vegeta's development in this arc, it's great.
So let's go on to some other character moments that were pretty good. So let's start with my boy Piccolo, because I Piccolo is my favorite character, bro. When he came back, now I will say when he first came back, I'm like, what is Piccolo? I love Piccolo, but what's he gonna do? Like before he fused with Nail, like I was like, yeah, it's cool that he brought him back, but he can't really do much against Frieza at this point, especially second form Frieza. So I was like, it almost seems like a wasted effort, honestly. But then when he fused with Nail, I was like, okay, like maybe even back then I wasn't super convinced that he'd be like as helpful as we would probably hope would be, because that's kind of like what the theme of this arc was. Like we call it like, you know, oh, this person got strong enough to beat this person, like maybe they'll stand a chance against Frieza, and then that false hope be the case. But yeah, but no, Piccolo showing up there and getting to work on second form Frieza. I was like, okay, this is the start of like Piccolo kind of being able to stand next to the Saiyans, because funny enough, whenever you see like the posters in the old days of Dragon Ball, and it's like most of the poster is like the Saiyans, and then Piccolo is in that one shot, and that's all it is. It's just the Saiyans and Piccolo, and like that's what I feel like this is starting to be like, because so like I feel as though, you know, at a certain point Piccolo was the guy that could stand next to the Saiyans in power, you know, because again, you know, even in the Broly movie, everybody else is a Saiyan that's fighting Broly, but then there's Piccolo who's doing just as much damage as everybody else, but he's not a Saiyan.
One of the things that's really interesting about this is that, you know, Piccolo is the Namekian, but for most of the arc, he's dead, right? So, like, the whole reason why they go to Namek is because Piccolo died, and they couldn't wish back the other characters that had died because of the lack of the Dragon Balls. I mean, they wouldn't have been able to wish back Chaozu either way because, you know, he had already been wished back once before. But with regard to that, one of the biggest things is that when Piccolo gets wished back and he gets wished to Namek, we get that like great little character moment where he's looking around. So this is Namek. This is my ancestral homeworld. I could feel it in my blood, you know? And the way that Piccolo achieves his great power in that arc is not just through training with King Kai. Somehow he gets like a massive power up in 6 days training with King Kai, into where he's like a rival for Goku, I guess. But not just that, but then he merges with Nail. And of course, Nail is like the natural born type of Piccolo. He's the one who stayed on the planet, who looks just like Piccolo. He's the warrior, he's the defender, and he merges with him. It kind of like reconnects with his roots to achieve his power. Kind of like how Goku, when he fights and defeats Frieza, he kind of reconnects with his roots in terms of becoming the Super Saiyan. He takes on the Saiyans in his fight, and then he achieves their legendary form for himself to win. So I think that's another great little piece of storytelling. Piccolo might not defeat Frieza, he might get beaten down like everyone else, but again, it's good storytelling. And like you were saying, Toriyama always would find a way to make Piccolo relevant, at least until the Buu Saga, in terms of like his strength. So, you know, Piccolo gets to merge with Kami. Piccolo gets to go into the time chamber. Piccolo, in the most recent movie, gets 2 new forms. So, you know, Toriyama, his favorite character was Piccolo, and definitely one of mine.
Yeah, so I won't go over too much about Piccolo in this saga, as I'll have plenty to say about him in the next video. But then we get also good character moments with Gohan. Like, Gohan was the GOAT in this freaking arc. You know, unfortunately, like, not so much during the Ginyu fight, but when it really mattered against Frieza, bro, he was someone you really wanted to have on your side. Even like Vegeta was giving Gohan like the biggest props to like in front of Frieza. Like, yeah, like this little one here, he doesn't even realize how strong he is, but he's the strongest. I think it was Frieza that said something like this, but Frieza's like, this kid is the strongest Saiyan I've ever fought. And then it's like, oh crap, like Vegeta's like right there. And so yeah, I don't know, Gohan, when it's happening, you're not really believing it. It's like, how can this kid, like, and again, it's something that we touched on the last video that we did, is like part of the reason why these scenes are believable is because they don't last long, like at all. And really in the span of a fight, or even in the span of a scene in general, when you're watching it, it's really not even like maybe 3 minutes tops. And so like it's so crazy that it happens, but then like once it's gone, it's like, oh crap, like now what's gonna happen? Like,
yeah, like Gohan gives us those little like flourishes of like a satisfying beatdown on Frieza without actually like impacting the story in a way to where it like, you know, he has to win. Like, Toriyama was like kind of building up Gohan throughout the first 2 sections of the story of since he was introduced, Saiyan and Frieza, because again, rages out, beats up second form Frieza, rages out, pushes third form Frieza to transform, and using his full power to get rid of Gohan's blast, you know. So again, Gohan keeps pushing and pushing. In the anime version, he actually fights against final form Frieza when he drops his power down a little bit again and is able to temporarily hurt him before Goku steps back in. But yeah, Gohan's my favorite character in the story, along with Future Trunks. You know, they give a lot of fan service for Gohan in a very different way, I suppose.
You know, wrapping it up, what if you had to pick like a moment in this arc, it's probably your favorite, what would you say?
Man, that's tough. Like, we talked about Vegeta's death. That's like the most emotional moment in the arc for me. There's Goku, of course, becoming the Super Saiyan for the first time. It's tough to pick like my favorite moment.
It could probably change, but for me, it probably would be Goku getting the final kind of shot on Frieza. Yeah, I was like, in my mind, I was like, I knew Frieza wouldn't just like let it go. Obviously, that's not how Dragon Ball operates. But it is like Goku gave like every single chance for Frieza to just walk away. And at the moment when you have literally half your body, you probably want to take that. Like, and And so yeah, he still tries to kill Goku, and Goku's like, all right, you really are just stupid.
Yeah.
You really are. You really just cannot help yourself.
You want death? Here it is.
Yeah.
Until, of course, a few chapters later, we find out that he actually didn't die somehow.
But still an iconic scene, iconic shot. And it's just like, Goku's just like, all right, no, like, you're done. Like, I can't. Like, I've literally tried to spare your life, like, numerous times. And you just
it's great storytelling. Like, Frieza is not truly a redeemable character in the same sense that a Vegeta or somebody is. He is so caught up in his evil, his pride, everything, that he cannot allow what Goku is trying to do to go through to fruition. He has to bring about his own death through his own arrogance, even though literally he's using the very energy that Goku gave him so that he doesn't die, and he uses it to attack, and he gets in fact defeated because of that. So speaking of the anime and manga, though, I did want to just touch briefly on the supposedly brief but incredibly long in the anime version of the Goku and Frieza fight after Frieza blasts the planet, because we have that awesome changing of the world and everything collapsing around them. 5 minutes, Goku, until Namek explodes. But of course, in the anime, it goes on for 4 hours. And so people are like, and thus began the biggest lie in anime history. But it's like, no, it's cinematic timing. They just stretch it out way too long in the anime. But in the manga version, it's way faster, way better paced. And you could read the manga version in 5 minutes if you read really fast. So, it makes sense in that context, that story. I guess we just assume that they speak really fast, like in all fiction, like the Flag could have a conversation in a picosecond, like it doesn't matter. But at the same time, it's like,
So that might trail on to what we were going to talk about next. Is that like what you don't like about the saga?
And also even the manga version, I just feel like the entire arc leading up to that final act with Goku versus Frieza, it is really like, they're all trying to hide, and they're trying to get around, and they're trying to escape, and then they're trying to find a way to get the Dragon Balls to defeat Frieza. Like, after the Dragon Balls turn to stone and then everyone just fights Frieza, I do feel like that section does go on for way too long, because we have all these fights against Frieza, and he transforms 3 times, technically 4 when he bulks up, and it kind of just goes on too long. And not just that, but also the power inflation is so insane in this arc. Goku's power goes from over 8,000 with a little Zenkai boost after he got, his body crushed and rejuvenated with the Sensu Bean, to having a power of 150 million. Everyone's power just jumps so insanely dramatic in this arc to where they're having to be in the hundreds of thousands or millions just to compete. And so a lot of the characters kind of do get left behind, even the ones training with King Kai, like the humans and stuff. It's really hard for them to compete after that. But those are kind of criticisms I often will hear also from other fans. So those are the main things that kind of pop out to me.
Yeah, and I think that would probably be what I would have said too, honestly, because I don't think there's really not a whole lot of gripes I have with this arc, honestly. I don't think it's, pacing aside, I think it's structured pretty well. I don't think the arc really has a low point per se. That's why I do appreciate stuff like Dragon Ball Z Kai and certain areas where they kind of cut the fat, so to speak. So but yeah, I mean, as a whole, if I had to do this 1 to 5 on a rating scale for the Namek Saga, I definitely probably would give it a 5. I don't, like I said, objectively, I don't think there's anything wrong with it. I think it's really good. I think it's really solid. It is not my favorite arc in the series, so I won't say which one it is yet, but yeah, but it is definitely one that I could definitely rewatch, and I definitely have no problem. I think I might actually like it more than the Saiyan Saga. I will say that, because the stakes are higher and
the peaks too. Not just Vegeta's widow's peak.
That but also too, something that people don't. People tend to forget is that if they lose here, then there are no Dragon Balls. They're done. No one is getting resurrected. And if Frieza wins here, he wins everywhere. So
yeah. So for me, I'd probably give it more it's hard. I'd be between a 4 and a 5. Just because of some of the stuff I mentioned earlier, But overall, in terms of iconography, this is definitely a strong contender for the most iconic arc of Dragon Ball.
Absolutely. I think objectively, it probably would be the arc that most people think of is when they think of Dragon Ball. Because, I mean, even people who don't watch Dragon Ball, you think Dragon Ball, you think Goku turning into Super Saiyan. When did he turn Super Saiyan the first time?
Yeah.
The Namek Saga. So, like, it's definitely like, you know, yeah. Like, high moments aside, I think this one's pretty good. I think it does do well in character development. Probably more so than a lot of other sagas in this series. There are definitely contenders for like good character moments in the Cell Saga and in the Buu Saga, but I think this one really sets the foundation for a lot of the characters going forward.
Absolutely.
So yeah, that's gonna do it for today's video. Thank you, Mike, for being on the channel once again. I really appreciate you having me.
Yeah, thanks for having me. You know, it was a fun conversation. We went really in depth with this deep dive conversation, and just wait for what else is going to come in the future.
Part 3 is coming up soon, so let us know in the comment section what you like or what you don't like about the Namek Saga. But anyway, thank you all for watching all the way to the end. If you have, make sure you like, subscribe to the channel. So thank you all for watching. Until